yeah, so Mark asked me if I would speak. It was probably 3 or 4 months ago, really. And I thought, well, I'll have something figured out. But anyways, no, thank you for the kind invitation. And I'll try to give an overview of my years as mayor, as well as how agriculture has been a big part of my life. And you're quite welcome to ask questions as I go along, and as well as at the end, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So that I can just. So there I am as a farmer.
Okay.
The Holstein cows on pasture, and there I was being inaugurated as mayor of the town of Bradford, West Wilmington. So maybe a little bit about myself. This is a picture of my family, but a little about myself. I was actually born in York Region, York County, on the family homestead on Dufferin Street in Vaughan, and was the 7th generation on that farm. My grandfather owned the farm. Development pressures were starting to hit the area south of Maple in the mid-50s. My father was renting the farm from my grandfather, and we were living on the homestead. My grandfather had moved into the village of Maple. So my father decided to, because of development pressure, to buy a farm near Bond Head. My grandfather ended up selling the farm to speculators in 1957, and we moved in 1957. My parents, my sister Janice, who is 2 years older than myself, to the 175 acres on the 5th line of West Gwillimbury. And that's my family of town council. So I'll just get to that a little bit later. So, picture of the family home, the Keffer homestead on Dufferin Street, and the Google Maps of it right now. You can't really see. It's mostly a parking lot. The green space, the trees at the top, that's a maple bush. My parents tapped maple trees, and the first fridge that they purchased was from the sale of maple syrup from that bush. Right across the street, Dufferin Street, it's a Cober Baker Cemetery. My father remembers going over and helping to dig graves in the cemetery when he was a young man. That was, to me, quite the experience. That, before backhoes and that were available. So, Mattress has their head office. That's the building in the top, right by the trees. The Muzo family have development there, and there's lawyers' offices. And it's Federation Parkway and Flora Parkway. So nice names, but it used to be an agricultural farm, 7 generations, that Jacob and Michael Keffer came up from Berlin, Pennsylvania, and settled in 1806. They were up to Ontario different times, 1798, 1799. Jacob Keffer had his oath of allegiance in 1799 to the I was going to say the province of Ontario, but that was before the province was there. So that's a long history, and I can remember the moving away from a community that had been very near and dear to my parents' heart. But at the time, there was other farmers that were moving away. One of the stories was that the church was a very integral part of the community at that time. A lot of the farmers that had sold and were planning to move away had a meeting after church one Sunday. They told their wives to head on home, and they had a meeting and some of the farmers were in tears because they had to leave their community. They got lots of money to relocate, but it was moving from the community that was so hard. And I think that's always kept with me, a memory that the community is so important. So we moved to the 5th line of West Gilmbury Township, and it was in 1957. And here's a picture of Bradford, Main Street, Bradford, 1957. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Gala days. I think it was the centennial celebration. But just imagine the people there. And wrestling, it says Gala Days, Bradford, August 4th through 6th. Wrestling, Veterans Day, sports, dancing. So, my parents joined many community organizations and farm organizations, and that they did get involved. They soon were part of the community, part of the Bondhead and Bradford community, and my dad actually was on West Gilmbury Council in the 70s as well. So I do have that history of my family. My grandfather was actually on Vaughan Town Council back in the 60s. So it had municipal politics had run in the family. So I'm jumping ahead here, but this is 2003. I had gone to university, the University of Guelph. Graduated in '76, got married in 1978, 3 children. Philip, who is a school teacher in Australia, he's in Australia still. Nicole, married to Tim, son Parker. They live in Penetang-Machine, and Nicole works for Ag Data. It's an online farm communications companies out of Guelph. And she's able to work remotely. And my son Matthew, who farms with me as a partner, and my wife Jean at home. So things were going pretty good, and then development pressure started in our area in the early 2000s. That this was the proposal from Geranium Corporation in 2003. They presented a plan to council for 70,000 people in Bondhead and to urbanize the land between Bondhead and Bradford for 114,000 person population. So this was in 2003. So it just seemed to be too much, too fast, too close to home, taking a lot of good agricultural land. And with knowing what my father had gone through and grandfather and how it can disrupt the community, I got involved with the residents group. There was a residents group called Bondhead VWG, Residents for Responsible Development. And it was quite an active group, and I did become the chairperson of that group. And I did speak at different events, different government sponsored, I guess you'd say, the government was asking for questions about the planning process, and there was opportunities to speak about the importance of farmland. So in 2010, I decided to run for deputy mayor. And I was successful. That as deputy mayor, I thought it would be good to be able to be on county council. The mayor and deputy mayor are able to go to county council. Anyways, it was a good 4 years, a good learning 4 years of how the municipality worked, of how the staff are involved with the decision-making process. And my son, Matthew, had graduated from Keffer College in 2006. So more of the burden of the farm was on him and my wife, Jean. So then in 2014, I decided to run for mayor. And again, it was a challenging but exciting campaign. And I was going against incumbent Doug White. And no doubt about it, Mayor White was a very good speaker and very easy to talk to when he was out door knocking, so I had my work cut out for me. But thanks to a lot of support of the community, it really was the support of the community and word of mouth that I was successful. And so that it was my chance to be mayor of the town of Bradford, West Goldenberg. So priorities, 2014. I wanted to look after the residents who live in Bradford, West Goldenberg now. I could see that there was so much growth happening in Bradford that the new areas in town were getting the nice new parks, the nice street lights, the streets that were well paved and looked after. And some of the more mature areas of town where people had lived for 20, 30 years hadn't had their final paving on their streets. And I thought it was important to be able to look after the long-term residents of our municipality so that they would be able to be proud of the streetscape and the area that they live in. Also, respect for tax dollars. I think being a farmer, you have to be frugal and try and make ends meet, and I think that was up there as one of the most important things for me. We needed housing for our seniors. Unfortunately, our seniors, when they wanted to move into a place where there wasn't as much upkeep, either had to go to Newmarket or Alliston or Barrie. Another important thing was to have park and recreation facilities for everybody. With the new communities that we had with very small lots, I realized for the young people, for the young families moving in, that we needed to have the parks, playground areas that could cater to them, and that respect for our heritage. That, again, that sometimes wasn't thought of too highly in the previous council, so that I thought that we had to keep an eye on that to be able to retain and respect the heritage of the town of Bradford, West Goldenberg. So, the first seniors building was the Eldon. Thanks in large part to the Presbyterian Church in Bradford. That funny little story that actually the town planners had made a mistake when they decided to do the new zoning of the official plan, because Mike Dorsey owned the land to the north of the 8th, to the north of the Eldon. He went to the OMB and got it part of the urban area. When a junior planner of the town redrew the urban area of the official plan, she actually added the Presbyterian Church in the urban area. And at one of the meetings of council when I was deputy mayor, there was a report to council that wanted to rectify this error and put the Presbyterian Church back to agriculture. So I questioned that, and I got some of the other council members to question it as well. And we said, well, you know, if we leave it as it is, wouldn't that give an opportunity for seniors housing or something like that? So it was decided to leave it as it was. If there was no complaints within 60 days, then the urban boundary would include the Presbyterian Church. So that's what happened, so that where the Eldon is, some people, it is sort of on the edge of town, but we needed seniors housing, Beckerman Properties came through, and a lovely facility beside the Presbyterian Church. The Presbyterian Church, when they were in the older part of Bradford, I gather, had the first daycare in Bradford. They stepped up and had an official daycare service. So here they were, you know, they looked after the young people, and now they were looking after the retired people. So that was pretty good of the Presbyterian Church.
That's on the 10th side road, isn't it?
Yes.
Milton Road, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the west side.
Right.
Middletown side road, yeah, 10th side road.
Where the Walmart is.
Yeah. And then Holland Gardens. That was built, and that's south of 88 across from Walmart on the west side of town. And again, it was completed about a year after the Eldon, and a very, very nice facility. And we were telling any of the developers that were into seniors housing that we needed it in Bradford, we needed it in Bradford. So of course they do their studies. And so yeah, I think the studies were saying that there was enough demand for 200 units. So we have about 250. No, I guess it's 280 units, or maybe it's 290 units now between these two. We did have other interest, and for a similar type of housing, we haven't had anything built yet, but there was one rental geared towards seniors that unfortunately because of COVID, they lost their financing. That was going to go right beside Holland Gardens. But there is another rental apartment building planned besides theirs, and that we look forward to that moving forward quite soon as well. So, other housing, so that doesn't show you much, but this is the Simcoe County Affordable Housing Building by Simcoe Road and Marshview. So it's the old arena and curling club you see in the background, and there will be 50 affordable units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, and on the first floor will be Simcoe County offices, Ontario Works, Children's Services. It'll be the first building that Simcoe County owns in Bradford, West Goldenberry that will have some of their own office space. Right now they're just leasing. So here we are, I think the most important municipality in Simcoe County. And we've had a lack of presence on the county of Simcoe. And so it did take quite a while for this to materialize. The town did donate the land. Unfortunately, we did have to lose the tennis courts. But we do have new tennis courts built at Taylor Park to replace the tennis courts that are here now. And so it'll be a nice facility. Similar, they have one in Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and the rents are actually quite, they were under $1,000 like 2 years ago to rent a one-bedroom apartment. So we'll have to see what market forces are, but they are quite reasonable. So we look forward to these being finished.
Are they rent controlled or subsidized?
They're, I get, yeah.
RGIs.
Rent geared to income.
Yeah.
So that they're, yeah. So that there's an application process, and anyways, that, but there will be, yeah, rooms available for seniors as well as for young families. And quite a few townhouse developments in town. This is Cache Homes by the 6th line, and different styles of developments has happened in the last 3 or 4 years with townhouse developments. And by Lions Park, there are bungalows that are up, and they're just finishing them off, and they're a different style of housing. So I think that in the town we saw a lot of single-family homes, and that we needed to get to different styles so that we could accommodate different age groups. But there's no doubt that the town of Bradford has had price escalation just like all across Canada, and that we hear that. And but I don't think it's because the town of Bradford hasn't built houses. We're not to blame for the lack of housing. In the 2016 census, Bradford West Glenbury was the second fastest municipality growth-wise in Ontario, and in the last census that came out, East Glenbury was the fastest, New Tecumseh was maybe third, and I think we were sixth fastest, Bradford West Glenbury. So the municipalities beside Bradford wanted to catch up. But this area, there is a lot of new housing. Yes?
Were there any, was there any building of multi-generational homes? I know now, I mean, after your tenure as mayor, there's a lot of talk of that, but I just wondered if there was any building of that during your time, those kinds of houses.
Yeah, quite a few of the single-family homes in town have 3 generations living in them just because to pay the mortgage. They'll,
No, I mean, like, you know, like set up of 2 or 3 separate units in a house, like, you know, like basement apartments plus main floor plus upper, that kind of thing.
Our mayor's here. Can you answer that? And is it right now that any house, any new house can have a basement apartment? So I'm not sure if there's, you know, many of the new subdivisions have that or not. James?
Your worship, back then our zoning didn't allow the 3. We could do multiple, we could do 2, but now it's changed where our zoning's going to be allowed 3. So the multi-generational just came in shortly after Mayor Keffer's term.
Oh, okay, great.
So now I'll move on to parks. Henderson Park, the stone there says 2017, and it really is a lovely park. The Henderson family, Cyril and Phyllis, donated the land, and this was through Dennis Ruffley and a council before, but there's walking paths and playground areas and soccer fields, tennis courts, and I guess you're going through the design of the next section now, James, so that it is exciting. That maybe I should mention, this last weekend was Beaton Fair, and Phyllis and Cyril Henderson were big supporters of Beaton Fair. In the Beaton Fair prize list this year, it had in remembrance of Phyllis Henderson, who passed away in 2021. And I got to thinking that this is almost our fairgrounds. This is when Phyllis and Cyril were so involved with Beaton Fair, and the new style of fairgrounds for athletics and for sports, but a gathering place anyway. So this was pretty special. So that any chance you get, go and visit it and check it out. It is pretty special. Playgrounds at Lions Park. This is at Taylor Park, and right now the new tennis courts have been put in, and this tree in the foreground, that's an oak tree. And it was just replanted last year. It was a big oak tree. Councillor Gary Lamb, he was a strong supporter of greening our municipality, and oak trees. And we called Gary, his nickname was the Great White Oak. And but he wanted to plant some large oak trees in our municipality, and this one went in Taylor Park. And he had the story about Notre Dame Cathedral, I guess, when that burnt, and they wanted to rebuild it. It was hard to find oak trees big enough in Europe to rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral. So again, a lovely park. I'll just back to parks. I think the municipality has 29 different parks that our parks and recreation staff look after. All the way, different sizes from Henderson Park, all the way down to probably half-acre parks. And so that when you realize our town is lucky to have so much green space, to have so many parks. So some of the other important things that we did as a council, a new fire hall, that and as well urban and rural works yards, and happily they did come in under budget and on time, and it was our staff had to work quite hard anyways to be able to stage the different construction. Some of the works yard and the 11th line, the water department is out there with a large building, as well as the rural works yard, and then this is in the old fire hall is the urban works yard offices, and this is a space for snowplows and other equipment. So it's important to keep our staff happy and to be able to have the facilities to look after the town. As I said, it was important to look after the mature areas of town. This is just new sidewalks, new pavement. Some areas they need new water mains, sewer lines. We go through and decide what each area needs and try and do it the most efficient way that we can. Sometimes we do run into a little bit of controversy from the residents. We're trying to do the best we can, but there is upheaval, and sometimes that even though you're trying to do a good thing and you're trying to improve the area of the town, that when it's being done, there are some complications. So you do your best. And after the fact, I think everybody's happy that it's completed.
My brother lived on Nelson Street.
Okay. Before or after the paving? Before, yeah, like
During, I think.
Yeah, okay. Some of these areas didn't have their last coat of pavement. You know, they were put in 20, 25 years ago, and there was still a little ridge by the curb. But then some curbs didn't need replaced, some did, and things like that, that we had to look after the tax dollars. So we just did what was necessary. And all the time trying to respect taxpayers' dollars. So the top chart is actual average taxes that the average homeowner would pay. And in 2014, that was $1,612, and then in 2022, it was actually less than that, $1,609. So because of the growth that was coming in and the efficiencies that we were finding with our staff, that our actual town taxes went down a little bit. Unfortunately, the county of Simcoe, South Simcoe Police weren't too bad, but they were on top of that, so that it was a little bit every year there wasn't tax increase except 2021, and that was because of COVID. And we didn't have any pay raises for our staff. We were trying to cut back and show our residents that we did care, that it was tough times, and that we were able to keep the tax increase negative for both the county police and the town. But, and the other tax comparison, that's actually off the New Tecumseh slide. They did that, and it just showed that anybody that lives in Essa does have the lowest taxes. There's no doubt about that. But Bradford came in next lowest, New Tecumseh, Sigabee, Innisfil, and Collingwood. So I haven't talked much about COVID, but I think that really was a tough time for council, a trying time for our residents. And one thing that our town council did that I'm happy we did, when businesses were shut down, we had a small business grant that we ran through the Nottawasaga Futures. And it was a $5,000 grant to any small business that could show that they didn't have income coming in, or their income was below 50% of what you normally would be. And we championed that in the town of Bradford, West Goonbury. East Goonbury followed suit. Georgina followed suit. But unfortunately, I tried to get the county of Simcoe to do that as well, and they didn't want to. The town of Bradford, West Goonbury sets $200,000 a year aside for economic development. And we use that $200,000 to help our small businesses to spread it out further. The county has over $1 million that they set aside, but no, they didn't want to do something similar. They were afraid that it might be considered bonusing, helping some businesses and not others. But our municipality, our CAO said, well, go ahead and do it, and if somebody complains, then you deal with that afterwards. So we went through, and I think we showed our small businesses anyways that we realized that it was tough for them. And they appreciated it. And as I said, East Goonbury and Georgina, so it was Caroline Mulrooney's riding, and she supported us, and it went through all right. And then the importance of heritage. So our Heritage Committee went through, and we listed pretty well every house that was over 75 years old. We were having issues with some of the farmhouses that the developers had owned, that they would be, they'd either be set on fire, unfortunately, or they'd be torn down. And with listing a property, all you have is 60 days to evaluate whether this house has the heritage characteristics to be saved. So we thought it was a preemptive strike to put all of these houses on the list, and then if a developer comes and wants to demolish a house, then we can look at it further and decide. And our committee, we had Ian Cooper, and he was really, really good as far as the analysis, and he realized the heritage value of some houses, and some houses just didn't have it. So, unfortunately, right now, there's a new planning act, and all the listed houses have to be taken off the list. They either have to be designated, or you can't put them on the list. So that's, this town council is going through that process now, I guess, and their heritage committee is looking at that. We did designate 8 new properties. Gomerson Thorpe House at the corner of the Beaton Side Road and 27, and the Earl Rowe property, the house and barns, that is designated. we tried to work with the owner of the Earl Road property, and they had a heritage planner, and they were quite willing to work with us, and we do have it designated, but we just have to figure out a way to save the house, to save the barn.
The other way to silently demolish a house is you just leave the doors open and people go in and do it for you. And that's what's happened to Earl Road.
Is that right? Yeah, that it's neglect that causes,
Yeah, it's willful neglect.
yeah.
And shooting through the roof.
Is that right? So that it's, yeah, rain gets in, moisture gets in.
Yeah.
So I will mention that the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury went through an official plan process. It took quite a few years. But what I was able to get added to the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury's official plan was that, and this is to do in the agricultural sector of the official plan, right now, if there's a surplus property, a surplus house to an ongoing farm operation, it is possible to get it severed. So I added the words a surplus residence or designated heritage house could be severed. Thinking of the Gummerson Thorpe house, if DG wanted to sever that house off, they would be able to do that. And the amazing thing is, there's a lot of people that would love to renovate a heritage home. With the Gummerson Thorpe house, at our heritage committee, there was a lady that was really gung-ho and wanting to do something with that house. And because it was part of the 100-acre parcel, until that would be developed, and it's not in the urban area, it'll be many years before it'll be developed, there wasn't any way to separate it. And the same with the Earl Road property. So just a caveat about the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury's official plan. I doubt whether any other municipality has that wording in for designated properties, and it has to be approved by the county of Simcoe, and they haven't gotten to it yet anyways. And just with the upheaval and provincial planning process, it's taking longer for our official plan to be approved by the county. But it is something anyways that hopefully if it slides through, it's the same as the Presbyterian Church in the Eldon. If it doesn't get any complaints, then that will be a possibility. Yep.
Have any of the Scotch settlement homes been designated?
I guess not. They're on the list. I'm trying to think. That I actually live in a Scotch settlement.
I
It's
know.
a settlement.
My family used to own that house.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, remember where the house is?
Yeah.
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 Where the
That.
firehouse is.
Okay. That. Yeah. Well, something for council to think of. Anyways. Deal with it.
Those homes were so beautifully built, but the walls are this thick. It
The
would be a shame if they all
stone,
got
yeah.
torn down.
Yeah. Basements and that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And mud brick homes as well. That there's different ones of
Yeah.
that are around that are, deserve heritage. President. I should say, Duncan Page's house on the 6th line, that is designated, and that's a mud. It has some of the houses a mud brick, I believe.
And Patton Bob Woods is the old Armson house.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have a heritage plaque program, and we do have a heritage property tax rebate program. So any house that is designated as heritage, there is a process that your property taxes will be decreased, and that's both the county's portion as well as the town's And I did miss, we started the process for a Heritage Conservation District in Bond Head. So it's a long process, and but it is continuing, right, James? There's still
It is.
consultation and
Good.
Yeah,
to move forward.
we'll probably have that finished this term.
Yeah, but, so again, that's, yeah. And then the last bullet point there, to recognize residents who have contributed to our heritage in our municipality. That Dr. David Chambers. So this is the Lieutenant Governor's Lifetime Achievement for Heritage Award. So that it's an application process that the municipality can put in, and that it very well deserving for Dr. David Chambers. And I know this group here, we all miss him. That at town council, at our heritage committee meetings, he would be there, and he would be our expert to be able to give advice. And so that was in 2014, and that went over so well that then Bill Marks of Bradford, he was honored in 2015, and then Mickey Nanowski in 2018. So it's quite a reception. You go down to Queen's Park, and it's in the Lieutenant Governor's, well, the awards are in the main staircase, and then the Lieutenant Governor invites you back to her area, her quarters, and for a reception. And Mickey Nanowski is standing under the portrait of Honorable Earl Rowe. And that is upstairs in the piano room, drawing room of the Lieutenant Governor. So we got a special tour anyways. One of the security guards took us up. And when you realize Honorable Earl Rowe was Lieutenant Governor in 1967, our centennial year, and the Queen of England came over to visit Canada in her centennial, our centennial, and it was Honorable Earl Rowe that had to meet her and tour her around. And that also that Earl Rowe was the leader of the Federal Conservative Party for a number of years, and quite a historic person right from Newton Robinson here. So to have his portrait honored in the Lieutenant Governor's drawing room was pretty special. And the Museum on the Boyne, the Wall of Honor, we were able to recognize Councillor Ron Simpson and Dr. David Chambers in 2016. Franz, 2018. Council West Gilmore Historical Society, 2019, and Jude Chambers, 2022. So I have some photos. That's on the wall. You see Dr. David Chambers, Franz Ashwaubenon, and Ron Simpson. Janine, getting the Council West Gilmore Historical Society plaque.
It's our 40th anniversary.
Very good. Very good. Then we have Franz receiving his painting, and June Chambers. And Gary Lamb was our historian. He was our representative on the Museum of the Boyne, and that he made sure that our history wasn't forgotten. So I sort of lost my speaking notes here, but before I go on to what's happening on our farm, I'll just say that I did enjoy my 8 years as mayor of the town of Bradford, West Bloomsbury. It was rewarding, busy, but I was happy with the accomplishments. We were a fast-growing town, but we did it all within our urban boundary. It was planned growth, and we were a welcoming community with a lot to offer to our new residents. Some of the things I haven't mentioned, the hub at 177 Church Street, that it will be the new home for the food bank, for Wild Living, and I gather the town is charging rent for the different facilities that are there, and it is all sold out, it's all booked, all the office space will be booked. But just check it out, it's 177 Church Street. Probably in a couple months, maybe it'll be nearing completion anyway, so it'll be quite an open house when it is open. And another thing that's happening, when the food bank and cross trainers move out of St. Mary's Hall, Loft Community Services will be building a 100-unit rental complex. Right now, they're just north of St. Mary's Hall, and that's the old nursing home, Bradford Nursing Home, and it's needs a lot of tender loving care, so that they're quite a good organization, Loft, that fundraises, and they're planning probably a 6-story, 100-unit, and these are for, I'll say, older residents that might have mental health challenges, and it's they do good work, and the residents are really happy with Loft and with our town, with our community, how they are welcomed in our town. I mentioned the Simcoe County affordable housing units, the 50 units, and they will have the county-owned office space at the first floor. And the industrial growth that is happening at Highway 488, that we actually need the development charges. The developers upfronted the cost to put the water and sewers out to employment lands as well as to Bond Head. So in the year 2025, we have to pay back the developers, and we do that through the development charges that we get from the industrial. So that there is quite a bit of building, and Tormont now has the walls on, and they're moving right ahead as well. So the other thing, I don't know whether to mention it or not, but the Bradford bypass. So this goes back to when I first became mayor and wanted to do something for our current residents. How many people know how many stoplights there are now between Newton Robinson and Central Lake Hospital? Probably when you first moved here, you could get to Newmarket in 15 minutes. Now with all the stoplights and traffic. So it's a congestion that the newcomers have brought to our municipality that affects us all, slows us all down, and it didn't really become controversial until probably 4 years ago. And we did have a survey, and 85% of the residents of Bradford were in favor of the Bradford bypass back in 2017. But it did become sort of a political football with the provincial Conservative government. And but I think that it has been in the works since the 1970s, really. And it will make our life better as far as getting around, taking a lot of the traffic congestion off of our rural roads. And that helps the farming community and keep some of the traffic off of our roads that the farming community uses. So That's all I'll say about that. We'll wait and see. That's a provincial government initiative, so we'll leave that up to them. So, as I was mayor, welcome to our farm, Tri-Island Farm. So this is our gate post. And picture on the right is from the 6th line looking down on us with the 3 silos and a field of wheat stubble with round bales of straw. And we are dairy farmers and twin heifer calves, so it's always nice, you know, having calves being born and replenishing the herd, and we are a registered Holstein herd. So there's my son Matthew, he's involved, he knows pedigrees, he knows the different sires and the different proofs that all the different bulls have, and he's been in charge of selecting what bulls to breed to our cattle to try and improve our herd. And there is still a good market for top quality Holstein cattle. Back in the 80s and 90s was when it was the most interesting, I guess, as far as Holstein cattle were the envy of the world. At the Royal Winter Fair, there'd be 50 or 60 different countries represented coming to see the best cattle in the world at the Royal Winter Fair. And maybe I better back up. Even in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, our area was known for having some of the best cattle in North America. That Bondhaven Farms, they had Bondhaven Signet Sally, won Grand Champion cow at the Royal Winter Fair 3 years in a row. Well, 2 years, missed a year, and then the 3rd year. And that was really something. So there'd be people from South America, from Europe, from Asia, coming to Bondhaven Farms to look at Signet Sally and her offspring. Glenafton Farms, north of Alliston, again, a very, very well-known farm. This was the Brian McCaig farm. And again, visitors from all over the world. Charlie Wilcox, the Wilcox family. Rosafe Citation R, one of the best known bulls in the 70s, I guess, 60s and 70s, was born on the Wilcox farm, and he was probably one of the most influential bulls in the Holstein breeds, and came from Simcoe County. Came from South Simcoe, came from the beaten road. Much more, and it was an exciting time that you'd have buyers coming in probably every week looking for bred heifers or bulls. And so the Holstein industry has been good to the farmers in Canada. And but it has slackened off. That when we had the mad cow disease scare, that must have been 20 years ago, that unfortunately our borders were closed and it never really recovered since then. So we have small square bales of hay, so that's the inside of a barn. Some of you quite familiar with the inside of a barn, the beams, purlins, and nice green hay going up in the hay mow. There is a granary at the bottom that we don't use anymore. That was hard work, putting grain in a granary that upstairs in the barn. Now we have big round steel granaries outside that are easier to fill and easier to unload. And on the right, we have 3 silos, upright silos for storage of corn silage and hay silage. And I thought this was an interesting picture. Probably not too many of you have been up on the top of a silo when it's full, but that's a 70-foot silo. So just imagine 70 feet of haylage, and that's 3 feet from the top. So you can look out there is an access door. a lovely view when you're 70 feet up, but it's completely full of silage. And that is the silo motor that's hanging from the top. The silver is the roof that you see. So there's a big long extension cord that goes up, and there's an auger that goes around the silo, brings the silage into the center, and then a blower that blows it out the door, and you take the door out as you're going down. And that's mechanization back in the 60s and 70s that really made a difference for feeding cattle. And then round balers, there's round bales of hay. Again, mechanization that changed. And they've been around for probably 30 years or more, round balers. So inside our barn, Matthew, our son, got married on the farm. So there's a wedding picture in front of the cows. And the cows with the TMR feed in front of them. It's a mixture of corn silage, haylage, ground corn, ground soybean meal, minerals and vitamins. And it's all mixed together. So every bite will be nourished or whatever to the proper nourishment. And you try and get them to eat as much as they'll eat, because that means they'll milk more and more. So you try and get the best production you can. But it's the old style barn with the beams, and it has certainly served its purpose and has done us well.
Isn't your family's barn at the museum on the Point?
The barn at the museum on the Boyne was the barn from 2 doors down. We purchased it, we called it the, it's the Weaning Jeffrey barn. Yeah, so the Jeffreys lived on Lot 3, Concession 5, until Hurricane Hazel. And the Weanings were living in Holland Marsh. I think they just moved from Holland maybe 2 years before. And Hurricane Hazel, their house was swept away. So they actually moved into the Jeffrey house, which is a stone, first floor stone, second floor triple brick, and a big attic. And until the Jeffreys had moved away and they'd bought another farm. But anyways, the barn on that property is at the museum on the Boyne. That's the barn there. Because it has a big swing beam in the center of it. It's probably at least 24 inches square. It's a swing beam, one of the largest ones around. It's 40 feet across. And that was impressive. And it was Rudy Wiederer, who was a craftsman that would take down barns and then build houses, expensive houses out of timber frame. And he came and asked if we had let that barn go to the museum on the Boyne as their exhibit space, so we did.
It was also one of the oldest ones they could find.
Okay.
That was still in good enough shape to be moved.
And so that it was pleasure to have it at the museum on the Boyne. But we do have plans for a new dairy barn. This is sort of the layout for it. The National Farm Animal Care Council and Dairy Farmers of Canada released an updated code of practice, and they want cows to have more exercise. They don't like stanchions, cows to be tied in stanchions. That's the steel neck supports that. And any new barns have to be freestall barns. So this is a freestall barn. We do have a contractor, hopefully the 1st of May. He'll start building. It'll have sand bedding on there's 89 stalls there. And at the bottom of the picture is a feed alley, and so the cows will be able to lie down when they want on sand. They'll be able to get up and move and eat whenever they want. And then these other two boxes here with the red, they're robotic milkers, so that's each side. So again, whenever the cow wants to be milked, she'll walk into that stall, it says Laylee. There is feed that comes down, and she'll get a little bit of grain just to entice her in. The milker will be automatically put on the cow. She'll be milked. Milker will come off, it'll be sanitized, the cow will walk out, sort of the gate that pushes the cow out, and then the next cow will go in. So that this is new technology. It's been around for probably 15 years, and more people are putting robotic milkers in.
Do you
June?
have music in your barn?
Not right now, we don't know. Classical, just nice soothing music, I think.
I don't know, you have to try and see which produce the best results.
Yeah, yes. That's right. That's well, maybe in the new barn we'll be able to, yeah. Because it's so quiet when you move, you know, when cows are happy and contented, you'll maybe hear them chewing their cud, they'll be hear that, but it's nice to go into a new barn where the cows are content. So just to finish up, the importance of agriculture as I see it, and the economic impact, the food security, the rural landscapes, the quality of life, and the community involvement. So in South Simcoe, there is still a lot of farmland. The last New Tecumseh, 44,000 acres. Innisfil, 41,000 acres. Bradford, West Coombury, 35,000 acres. Essa, 39,000 acres. Atchitossarantio, 49,000 acres. So that Bradford, West Coombury, we have the Holland Marsh, and a lot of those farms are smaller, but they're every bit as important. I think Bradford probably has the most farm employees of any municipality just because of the Holland Marsh and the intensive workload that the vegetable farms have. And New Tecumseh, with their specialty crop area, the potato lands, is very important. And so there's probably over $200 million of direct farm activity in South Simcoe, just with the acreage that is there, and that it multiplies as the money is used for a supplier, whether it's a trucking company or a welding shop or a farm machinery dealer or a feed store or a vet, that money goes to the community and helps out quite a bit.
Now, are those acreage numbers, are those farming operations farms or owned by the farm? Like, are some of them developer owned for the future?
Some of them would be developer owned, yes. It's farmland is what it's classified as, so it's not the ownership, it's the,
Right.
so.
So there's no guarantees in the future of that land?
That's right. Dave?
Rob, and that's, you're talking total acreage, like area of the municipality?
It's land farmed, I
Oh, it's
think.
workable acreage.
I think it is,
Oh, okay.
some of it's pasture land, it could be
Okay.
pasture land, but it is, it's from the agriculture economic impact study that was done.
Okay, good.
That Angela Toss, that sort of surprised me that they're the most, but some of that's pasture land, some of that's good land, it's a variation. But, food security, that with the shortages during the first few months of COVID, I think people realize that disruptions in supply chains, we want Canadian grown food, that when we have the climate and the soil and the know-how of the farmers, that it's pretty important to keep food to be grown in our area. And the dairy industry, that I think it keeps the small farmer in Canada to be competitive. Some of the large farms in the States might have 10,000 cows, some even have 20,000 cows. It's just amazing how big they are. Whereas right now we have 55 cows. And we're competitive, but we're building a barn for 100 cows. And I think that we can still be competitive. It's still a family operation. And most Ontario farms, they'll have 3 or 4 family members that are involved, that it is a family operation. With ourselves, it's my wife Jean and my son Matthew. And I know that the price of milk did take an increase in the spring, and sometimes dairy farmers are on the getting bad publicity anyways. But there is a cost of production formula, and unfortunately the price of feed skyrocketed a year ago. Somewhat because of the war in Ukraine. And just to give an example, the price of wheat peaked last year at $432 a ton. Right now it's at $232 a ton that a farmer can get. So not everything is inflation. The farmer's price fluctuates quite a bit. Similarly, the price of corn is probably the lowest it has been for 4 or 5 years right now. So that maybe that's a good sign for food inflation moving forward. If some of the processors will actually pass some of that savings on to the consumer. But similarly, dairy farmers with their cost of production, that shows that our feed costs have come down. Then the amount of money that we get from the dairies will come down as well. But, yes?
Is your milk sold locally then? Unless it's not processed, or?
It goes to a processor.
Yes.
So with our marketing board, they save money on trucking. So they'll have one truck pick up all dairy farms in the same area. So sometimes our milk will go to Solani Cheese, which is on the second line of Bradford West Bloomsbury. Other times it'll go down to Brampton to the fluid milk processing plant in Brampton. So we really don't know. It can change from the milk truck comes every other day, and but no, Solani is so close to us, so a lot of times that's where our milk will go. Yep.
Due to the development around the 5th line with the new interchange there, is your farm at any risk from that?
Well, I think it's 50 years. We've got 50 years to be able to farm it. That I can't see that just with the population figures that the town of Bradford West Bloomsbury is supposed to meet. We're far enough away that hopefully that there's, yeah. We didn't increase the urban boundary, but now the town council has to decide where and how they're going to increase the boundary around Bradford. But if they just took a 100-acre farm all the way around the northwest and south side, they'd have lots of land to meet their population targets. So we're probably 8 farms away from where that is or whatever. So
My local spire just they behind it out of Saga, so it's not kind of tree tops.
unfortunately, the developers want to go and develop as far away from the urban boundary as possible and then backfill. So our town council, you try and stop that. Just keep it close to the urban boundary that we have now. That,
So are you feeling any pressure from climate change?
there's more severe storms, there's no doubt about that. That we've been lucky as far as we still had good crops. The last year was our, 2 years ago was our best corn crop ever. Last year was our best wheat crop ever. This year our wheat crop is pretty well as good. The corn and soybeans look awfully good this year, just with all the rain. So it's hard to say, but in the wintertime and then early spring, early fall, you get severe storms that you're not used to. So we can see that.
How did the cows handle the heat?
We do have 4 big fans on the end of the barn that it's called tunnel ventilation, and it helps. But when you're in there working and milking cows, it's not very pleasant. That is not a pleasant job, milking when it's 90 degrees out. So that there's usually some flies and some, just that you're sweating and, so. I see some people nodding, that they realize what it's like. So the new barn, it'll have tunnel ventilation as well, and then it does have fans that'll keep the air circulating when it is especially hot. Some of the newer barns have actually misters that they put water through the fans and it sort of drops the temperatures. But I think in our particular area this summer, like August wasn't as hot as what it usually is, so whatever caused that. And just, I was going to say, rural landscape, I think people like our community, like our town, just because of what the area around the town looks like. And people driving through the Holland Marsh, I know people love to look at the Holland Marsh and the nice straight rows and the vegetables growing, and just the impact that it has. So that's important for agriculture. Quality of life, I put a picture of planting corn or whatever. It is a pretty good lifestyle. Always something different happening every day. But the springtime is a time of optimism, of planting the crop and hoping for the best. And you get to see your fruits of labor in the harvest that fall. And then community involvement. So who knows what community that is on the left? It's not a very good picture, I must admit. But a green oasis in the center of town, that's Beaton. And that's the Beaton Fairgrounds. Yeah, you don't realize it until you see the ball diamonds at both ends of the fairgrounds. And I had the pleasure of speaking at the opening of Beaton Fair on Friday night, so I did a little bit of research. So it's the Beaton and District Agriculture Society, and the word district is in there because the fair used to move around from village to village, and it would be in Keenansville, Thompsonville, Tottenham, Loretta, Beaton, and even Bond Head. So Bond Head at one time had the Beaton Fair. But then the train came through Tottenham and Beaton, and there was a competition between Tottenham and Beaton, who would be the permanent home for Beaton Fair. And Beaton had a fairgrounds further east to this, so east of the United Church on the other side of Center Street in Beaton. And they had a racetrack for harness racing until 1898, and it was sort of wet land there. So they purchased this property for $500 in 1898 and built the Rotary Hall. And they had a mortgage with the lady in Beaton, $100 a year for the next 5 years. And they rented it out to a farmer who pastured his livestock on the fairgrounds, and the rule was he had to get the livestock off 1 week before the fair. So the grass was all cut and fertilized and that, and ready for the fair. And they did sell some of the property to the town of New Tecumseh to put the playground in at the front end. So that was a pretty wise business decision. And here, it's the oasis in the center of Beaton. And it's the Agricultural Society. The former directors that had the foresight to do that. And they have meet your neighbor picnics and things like that. And the picture on the right is Carrot Fest. Huge crowd comes to Carrot Fest in Bradford every year. Similarly, Potato Fest in Potato Festival in Alice. So that so the agriculture roots are still pretty strong in our communities. So with that, thank you, and any questions? Yes?
What happened to your ancestral home in Maple?
Okay, so that it was torn down, and yeah, it was unfortunate, but yeah, we were across from Isaac Baker's harness shop. The Baker Sugar Bush was around the corner. The Raymonds were our neighbors down there. So we were only about 3 or 4 miles from Black Creek Pioneer Village. And it was, yeah. I went to Pioneer Village this summer just to check it out and realized that the guides were quite forthcoming that it was the Stong property was purchased by developers, then Hurricane Hazel came, and they realized that they would not be able to build houses on the floodplain from the stream that ran through the Stong property. So then they decided to move, well, they used the Stong house and outbuildings, and then they started moving other houses into Black Creek Pioneer Village. And I know some people here know more than I do about Black Creek Pioneer Village, but so it still is very worthwhile to go and see, and just the volunteers that they have at the different places there, the Mennonite church and everything was quite interesting.
When I was living in Richmond Hill, the Baker Sugar Bush was at the corner of Bathurst and 7th. Is that what you're talking about? That's what.
Yeah, we were on Dufferin, and they, yeah, so
Right,
Dufferin and then Bathurst. So
Okay,
that,
okay.
but the Bakers lived right across. There was Bakers on Dufferin Street. That was Isaac Baker's harness shop at the corner of Dufferin, and basically Highway 7.
And it burned down, and
Yeah, yeah.
the young lady turned the wood stove up for us, and I heat it, and then the roof caught fire.
Question at the back?
Yeah, what percentage do you think you're going to improve with your automatic milking system?
Cows will milk better. That's been proven. They'll probably milk 30% better, because right now we milk our cows twice a day, and you can set it so that the cows that are really milking heavily can go in 3 times a day. And it's when the pressure in their udder gets to a certain point that they just want to be milked.
Yeah.
And the sand bedding, again, is supposedly very, very comfortable for the cows, and just the comfort that they have. So right now in the dairy industry, you have a breed class average, which is your average milk production. And ours is about 220 BCA points, breed class average, and a lot of robot barns will be around 300 breed class average points. So it hopefully, anyways, you always hope that it'll improve.
friends have an automatic system, and they said there's one cow one time did 69 liters in one day.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So that, yeah, that's over 200 pounds. Yeah. That, yep.
How do you go about cleaning your new barn if there's sand on the floor?
Sounds like you've heard. So, we've already ordered, Laley has like a vacuum cleaner that goes around up and down and sucks up the manure behind the cows. It automatically has a run. And if there's enough moisture in the sand, like the sand is kicked out of where the three stalls are so that there's good footing for the cows. But supposedly this has enough suction, there's brushes and then it sucks it up. It's like and then it goes to the end of the barn and drops it in a little pit that then is gone out to the liquid manure tank. So I don't think it'll be a problem cleaning up.
Version of the iRobot?
Basically it is, yeah.
No scrapers in your barn?
Not planned.
Okay.
I don't think there'll be a problem in the barn. What the problem will be in the liquid manure tank. The sand settles in the bottom of the liquid manure tank, and some people have to lower a little skid steer, like ours is 12 feet deep, a round circular manure tank, and then to push the sand so that then you can lower it. So that we'll see how it works out in there. Yep.
Do you harvest any of the methane gas off the poops?
No, we haven't. And it's usually bigger farms that will do that. That they'll have a geodesic dome over top of their liquid manure tank, and the methane gas rises, and then they'll pipe it off and be able to utilize that. So that possibility, though, there's, I don't know, there'd be half a dozen of farms in Ontario that do that. Yeah.
So how does the sand get replaced then? Like I'm thinking, okay, the sand is going in as it's dense, but then what's the replacement process?
Well, we'll have to buy truckloads of sand in. The sand will go on our land, like when we've got heavy clay soil, so a little bit of sand will actually help our fertility level.
Because it has to be screened out of gas.
Yeah, and there is some sand that's better than others, so yeah, we'll have to look into that. There's different farms around, O'Hara's, Dennis O'Hara.
But how does
sand.
it get back into the cows, or like if these free stalls? So what's that process?
Well, I think every day my son will have to go with a rake and just level it off. And then once a week you'll add more sand. You can buy sand keepers or whatever that go underneath. They're almost like rubber tires that have a lip on them so that they can't get the sand out. But there is a lip on the back of the stalls, so the sand, most of the sand stays.
So then my other question is, does it change your life significantly? Like, I'm thinking when I was when we were farming and you have your times you're milking, so now you have these robots. Does that significantly help you, or is there still work that you're still kind of there?
Yeah, you're not tied to the barn like you are at the morning and afternoon. So with my son and Sierra, he can go to swimming lessons or dance lessons or skating lessons at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever. So he can plan his day. He'll still have to probably have an hour to feed the calves, an hour to feed the heifers, 2 hours to feed the cows without their TMR, and maybe an hour to do the stalls. So he'll still be working, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, but he can plan, split it up. Yeah. Franz?
Since you mentioned handwork, like mucking out with a rake, and since this is a historical society, I thought I'm going to ask you, have you ever milked a cow by hand or cut grass by hand?
I have milked a cow by hand. When I was, the cow's name was Faye, and she was the oldest cow in the barn. I think she was 13 years old when I was maybe 10 years old. And she was in a corner stall, and yeah, that was my cow to milk. And so, yeah. But as far as, yeah, cutting grass and lawns keeping, no, I haven't used a scythe for that.
I didn't want to have a follow-up question, but since you actually didn't milk a cow when you were 10, I milk a cow as well by hand, and I was also a boy, rather young. And the thing that got me the most is that the cow's tail would occasionally hit my face.
Yeah. Especially when there's flies. Yeah. Memories, yeah. Yep.
For those of us who didn't grow up on a farm, before the robots, or even today, what are you guys doing to milk cows, and how automated is the process?
Okay, so we have 6 units, and we actually have a track. It's just like a barn door track. So you push these units, and there's 2 milker units that go in between 2 cows. And you prepare the cow's udder, you dip it with a disinfectant, and then you wipe it with a paper towel, and that stimulates the cow to let her milk down. And then you push a button, and that releases the milker claw for teacups, and you put that milker up on the cow.
So you physically place it on the udder? Or?
Yeah. But the one nice thing with ours is that they're automatic takeoff, so when they can tell when the cow slows down the amount of milk. So there'll be a beep, 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 and then it's done by vacuum, and the vacuum will be shut off. So there's a cord on the claw that's underneath the cow's udder, and the cord will be pulled up, and so that you don't have to be there to take the milker off. So then you can move it to the next 2 cows and prepare the cow. So it's a lot more automated than it used to be, but and you don't have the lifting when you just push it around. This track goes all the way around in between the cows. So that's it.
Okay, I have one last question on the robots, because I'm so fascinated by all this new technology. So I'm thinking the cows know to go to that particular, so who's training the cows initially to understand that's the, do you know what I'm saying, like cows?
So
are
that
cows.
takes a good month or 2 months. So it's a pretty hectic time for the
Yeah.
farmer, and he needs the Lely sales reps will come and help. They'll have 4 or 5 guys there the first day and sort of push the cow in. So they have to learn that, oh, we've got some grain here to eat, and they like it's a special highly palatable feed that you put in the robot, so that entices the cow to go in. And then they have to learn about the gate that, swings against their rump and pushes them out. That's an electric eye, and there's a memory, so they have a neck chain around, and so they know that it's cow 264, and it remembers, okay, this cow is wide in the forequarters and close in the rear quarters, and so that it sort of already knows where to aim the milker, and it knows if it's not successful, and it'll try again. So,
We want to
yeah.
come to field trips through the technology.
Well,
Is the
maybe
feed
near side.
dispensed automatically when the cow comes into the,
Yeah, it sort of, squeezes, pushes up against the side of the cow and, gets it in position. And then it automatically, the arm goes out underneath it. Yep.
So I assume when the calves are born, because you need the milk, then the calf, they're fed, I know, by like, you feed them. So the question then is, do you find that the cows themselves are in distress, that their calves are not really, because they're so young that they're not bonded?
Yeah, and we'll keep our calves with the cows maybe 2 days,
Okay.
so that we do it longer than some people. But no, they don't seem to, I don't think cows have the maternal instinct that some other breeds do. So it doesn't seem to bother
The
them.
reason I ask, because I've seen, I've heard a cow, there was one on the farm behind us, I don't know if it was they had beef cattle or whatever, and when they took the young calves away, we heard a lot of noise from the 2 cows or 3 cows or whatever, so you knew when they took them away.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I figured it went because they're older, they have more.
I think it is because it's older. Yeah.
It's the difference in the breed.
Ah,
I was just watching a video about this last night. The beef cattle are much more bonded to their calves than the dairy cattle are. And you try to get near a beef cow's cow,
yeah, yeah. Well, I was
you'll be
asking.
in big trouble.